What's up, everybody on FA Nation, FantasyAlarm.com. My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Matt Selz, and this is Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk here on Monday. Selz, how's everything, man? Austin Dillon, dude, Adam Rona's going to be taking your job soon enough. I see you sweating a little bit.
Yeah, he sent me an email last night. Subject line, Dillon. The body of the email, I'm coming for your job. And then I politely asked him if he bet on Austin Dillon. It was going off at plus 12,500. And he said, no, I just went on a gut feel to ask you about it. And I was like, well, you lost out on money.
Yeah, so he's still chalking it up as a loss, even though he didn't place the bet. The fact that he didn't place the bet after singing his praises literally on Alarm After Hours, he didn't place the bet. Come on,
yeah. Had an FA sub that placed the bet. $5 turned into 630. So that's a pretty good payday there. I was desperately hoping that Austin Dillon would finish second because I bet on Tyler Reddick, his teammate, who finished second, and I had him at plus 8,000. So I was looking for a nice little payday there, but it didn't turn out to work that way.
It's $600+. That's a lot of Chipotle dinners right there that you do not have to pay for. That's what happens when you're on FantasyAlarm.com, and you get, of course, the blessing and the tutelage of our two-time FSWA award winner in Matt Selz for DFS NASCAR. Now, Selz
also had a sub win 17,500 on FanDuel yesterday. So
why don't you bury the lead? Why don't you?
Because I'm good at burying the lead.
I mean, it's at 17 grand. Dang. Nice.
Yep.
You didn't ask for a cut, did you?
No.
Okay, I know people that would.
I get paid well enough at FA that.
Yes, there you go. Look at this company guy over here. It's Matt Selz. All right, Selz, stop distracting me. Enough about NASCAR here. Let's talk about the baseball season starting up. You're a huge baseball guy. I'm a huge baseball guy. It's an exciting week. But for those that have been, I'm not playing fantasy baseball, all of a sudden, just like our producer of this live stream, John and Pemba, they're getting that itch, Selz. We haven't had our core sports for many months. Now they're coming back, and everybody, all the haters out there that didn't want to be involved, I'm getting the messages on Twitter. I know you are too, especially from the Family Times podcast we do here on the site every week. People want to play some season-long fantasy baseball. Are you getting that vibe too?
Yeah, I am. We're trying to fill our listener league right now, actually. I'm not sure if there's any open spots, but you can hit up John and Pemba on Twitter, and he'll be able to give you that. We started up our own league here for Family Times listeners, and we debated how to set it up on the most recent podcast. So we're going to dig a little deeper into setup stuff on this FA Sports Talk here.
Absolutely, and it's very important. Now, some of you might we get into day one or day two of the season later in the week, and you're like, I want to still be involved too. Then you could spend the weekend setting up your league by watching this live stream. So, Selz, when we talked about this, and this is why I thought it's a great topic, because everybody at the last second, including me, all my leagues decided to pull out of the season. I was left as an unrestricted free agent. I wanted to play. John and Pemba came up with the bright ideas. He comes up with many bright ideas. And now it's deciding the most ideal format to play with the conditions that we have. 60 games. You never know what can happen, Selz. And when we think of how to set up a league, what strikes you first? What's something very imperative in these times that we have to make sure we take care of?
So the first thing is taking care of whether you're going to play roto or head-to-head or, points or whatnot. I don't have a big problem with a points league in a 60-game season, but you can't do head-to-head in a 60-game season. There's just not enough. There's, 8 weeks in the season? They're playing 60 games in 66 days. So, 10 weeks of baseball, something like that. That's not enough time to get a head-to-head together, and then you have playoffs. You're going to have, a 6-week regular season. That's not enough time. So it's going to have to be roto, or you can do total points if you want to do it that way, but no head-to-head formats for a 60-game season is the key thing here.
Let me stop you there and ask you about this, because as someone who is one of the leaders of the head-to-head army, not for baseball, though, because baseball, I've conceded with that as well, Selz, and that I understand the reality of the situation, and we can't have multiple weeks taken away just for playoffs. We really don't have that much season. So that totally makes sense what you said. I agree with you. So for all of those that are going to roto formats and are worried about things like league prizes and everything like that, how would you put league prizes in a roto league, would you pay out more teams because, to get more people involved with this light of a season?
So my home league, which we canceled our normal, it's an 18-team home league that I've been in for several years. This league's been going for like 34 years already. So the league is actually older than myself. But so I joined several years ago. We put our normal season on hold, and we're just doing we called it, so our normal home league name is the I-95 League, because we used to all live along the I-95 corridor. So we're calling this one the I-95 Detour League, because it's a little bit of a detour about our regular stuff. So we set up just a normal snake draft, and we actually have 20 teams in our snake draft league, and we only had 18 in the in the regular, so it got bigger. But we are actually paying out the same. We pay out the top 5 in our 18 team, and so we're paying out top 5 in this one, which I guess percentage-wise is a little smaller because it's 2 extra teams. But we're basically enticing people with free, like if you finish in the top 5, you get paid out, plus you don't have to pay the entry fee. So that's how we're enticing people. We have, and the easier thing about Roto is if the season does, for whatever reason, get cut short and they don't play the full 60-game season, it's easier to just cap the standings where they are because everybody's players have basically played the same amount of games. So that's the easier way to, finagle a shorter season and payouts and deal with that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because when it comes to the season being stopped, and I've been talking about it especially for fantasy football, but even for baseball, this applies to having your, quote, Corona contingency plan.
Yes.
So when it comes to that for baseball, and I've asked Jen Piacenti this, I've asked Ronas this, so now I'm going to ask you, how much of the season actually has to play of the 60 games for you to feel comfortable giving out prizes in fantasy baseball leagues?
I would put it at about 60%. I think it's got to be more than 50%, but we're not going to go all the way to 3/4 because I think that might be stretching things a little bit. So it's got to be like 60%, because the other argument is that, if you get 60% in, that basically runs it right up to about the first week of football. So you can make the argument that if you get 60% of the season in, then, people can start turning their attention to football leagues if baseball's done and it's a cleaner transition. So I would say 60% to feel reasonably good about giving actual payouts and not just giving people their money back. We also decided you didn't have to pay to draft. You just had to pay by the end of whenever the season ends to make it easier for people to join the league. So that's another thing I would consider, this time, whereas we don't normally do that. Normally we have to pay the full entry fee by the time the draft happens.
Well, why would there be a difference?
So, a couple of reasons. One, it makes it so that if we don't get all of the games in, let's say they play 20 games and it gets so widespread they have to shut it down, then it saves the commissioner trouble of having to, reverse all the transfers and whatnot. The other thing is, we've had people in our league that have had some economic hardships during the coronavirus because they've either gotten laid off or their jobs are not as busy as they typically are, so therefore they make a little bit less. So this way it gives them a little bit extra time to, not sweat the fees. And also, like I said, if you finish top 5, you don't owe the league due, so it lets it play out a little bit. And so maybe if you don't have the money but you finish top 5, it kind of bails you out a little bit that way too.
Yeah, and Selz, and I think that's very nice. And I want to say to everybody, there's nothing wrong with playing for free. Understand the times that we're in with COVID. Absolutely no times. But if you're struggling with money, then maybe you shouldn't be playing in 20 fantasy baseball leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only playing in a couple, and normally my home league's buy-in is a couple $100 to play. This one's only $50, so we've drastically cut the entry fee down. But yeah, if you're tight, don't play in paid leagues. Just play for free, have fun. It's a 60-game sprint. I would say learn strategy, but there's literally no strategy you're going to learn in the 60-game sprint that you can apply to following seasons.
Well, I mean, when it comes to waivers, how impatient can we be with certain players? Because if you draft a player in the first 4 or 5 rounds, then are you just going to be okay with dropping that player halfway through the season? You drafted them because even if they struggle more than the other players, you would expect them to be able to have an easier time getting out of those struggles. How are you going to handle that?
Yeah, I'm typically a more patient player when it comes to a full 162 game season. I'm not like, like a 5-game slump in April. I'm not cutting bait with like Freddie Freeman. But like now, you might just have to consider it because you don't really have time to, if that guy has a terrible week, it might take you longer than normal to get your average back up because as a percentage of your total, that's a bigger percentage. So, obviously the guys you take in the first couple rounds, I'm going to be a little bit more attached to them than guys you take after that, just as, just from, just like a normal sports team. It's going to take more for a former first-round pick to get cut in the NFL than, say, like a 4th or a 5th or a 6th rounder. So, that being said, though, pitchers especially, I'm going to be super impatient on pitchers. It could be that one bad start and you're gone because I don't have time to see if you're going to rebound the next start, because if I get 2 bad starts out of you, now my ratios are super gone.
That's for any pitcher.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm going to give you a situation. So I was going to ask you how you're handling pitching when it comes to drafting. If you're drafting this week before Thursday, Max Scherzer, guy you could take late first, early second, he has 3 bad starts in a row. You're going to drop him at that point?
Probably.
Wow.
And keep in mind, I'm a Nats fan.
That's a take and a half right there.
Like, clearly my background, I'm a Nats fan. And also, by the way, for those that care about this stuff, he got lit up by the Phillies his last time, like 2 days ago. They hit a couple of bombs off of him pretty quickly there. So, yeah, I mean, even the elite guys, 3 starts is like, that would be the absolute max. Because, not to be a play on words there for Scherzer, but you got to figure that the aces are going to see 12 to 13 starts tops, right? So if you get 3 bad starts, that's a quarter of the starts you're going to see. It's going to take a lot longer to build back up those ratios to where you expect them to be. Because also keep in mind, a lot of these guys aren't necessarily going to go 5 innings right out of the gate. Like the top flight guys like Cole and Scherzer and Verlander and whatnot probably are. But like a guy like Walker Buehler, they've already said he's not going to go more than like 2 innings his first start and probably not more than 3 innings his second start. So if he gets beat up, that's a small, that's a small number of innings, but it's also almost a quarter of the starts you're going to see out of Buehler. There's less time to get ratios back up. So yeah, even for elite pitchers, I'm going to cut bait pretty quick. Closers got to be super quick because in a sprint, they're going to have no time to see if the guy figures it out in the 9th inning. They're going to need a guy that they can depend on. So there's a higher chance that closers lose their jobs faster this year than they typically do, and that's already a volatile position.
So how are you handling starting pitching then when it comes to your late drafts here? Are you just not going to go after these aces? If your level of patience is already so thin, then why spend 2nd and 3rd round picks on some of these pitchers and just wait until 6th, 7th, 8th round?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what I did in my home league. They went faster than I thought they would have. In the first 60 picks, 25 of them were starting pitchers, which was a little shocking to me, given that strategy suggests that the elite hitters will still put up more stats per at-bat than the elite pitchers will. The difference between Max Scherzer and a guy like, I don't know, Corbin was pretty elite, but like Anibal Sanchez will stay on the same team. The difference between Scherzer and Anibal Sanchez is that over, let's say, 60 innings, there's not a huge difference between the numbers you're going to get from Scherzer and Sanchez in terms of ratios and strikeouts per 9 and whatnot. The difference is Scherzer in a normal season can go 200-plus innings and put up those same numbers. Anibal Sanchez can't. That's why in a long season, you're paying for the guy that can get you a lot more innings at a lot lower ratio. But in a 60-game season, the playing field is pretty similar between a lot of these, top 1, 2, or 3 starters for their team. So I waited on starting pitching in my last draft. I still like my pitching staff, but it's a lot more mid rotation guys. My top pitcher right now is Tyler Glasnow, which if he's healthy, he can put up really good numbers. But I took him in like the 6th or 7th round. And then I filled in with some other guys, and I went a lot more middle relief than I normally do, because middle relievers can get you a whole lot of wins this year based on the way starters are going to be used, how quick the hook is going to be for some of these guys, and the 3-batter minimum means that these relievers could pick up a lot of wins.
Interesting. Now, something else that was asked of me, and now let's talk about the scoring factor of these last-second fantasy baseball leagues, which all of you still have time to set up. Even when games start, still set it up anyway. You get the bug on Thursday or Friday, set it up. And that's, by the way, why, while we're going to pitch our fantasy football draft guide to you, which you could get at fantasyalarm.com/NFL draft guide, not only do you get the fantasy football draft guide for 1997, you also get the Jim Bowden MLB draft guide as well. All the articles that you need, plus rankings that were frequently updated, especially during these times with COVID. So they're all ready to go. So you get 2 for the price of 1 in that regard. And then you can win a whole lot of titles in both sports. Selz, let's talk about something that you brought up on the Family Times podcast last week when we were setting up our league. And we said, do we go batting average or on base percentage? You actually then bring up OPS. So why are you such a big proponent of OPS?
So to set the record straight, I believe John originally brought up OPS, and then I agreed with him.
Oh, my bad.
Because batting average is flawed as a statistic. It just is.
Thank you for that statistic.
Yes, I am a proponent of OPS, or at least using on base percentage, because they're truer measures of what a hitter brings to the plate with him. So for those that are unaccustomed to OPS, it's on base plus slugging. So essentially, slugging is a measure of basically how valuable your hit was. So a home run, you get credit for all 4 bags, triple 3, double 2, and single 1. So the idea is if you hit a home run, it's weighted as 4 times as valuable as a single, which you can make the argument that on pure total bases, it is, plus you score a run, plus you drive in whoever was on bases. So an on-base percentage counts the guys that draw a lot of walks. And a perfect example of this is that in our league, a guy like Bryce Harper is way more valuable than he is in a pure batting average league. Because batting average-wise, the best you're going to hope for from Bryce Harper is like a 270, maybe 275. But his on-base percentage can almost be 400 with the amount of times he draws walks or just purely gets walked in the course of a game. So you're getting a lot more value out of guys that draw walks, which is a key part of baseball. Moving a lineup involves drawing walks so you can set up the next guy. Because let's say Bryce Harper draws a walk and Rhys Hoskins gets up and smashes a home run. Well, you, as a Rhys Hoskins owner, have benefited from Bryce Harper drawing a walk because now you get 2 RBIs versus just the 1. But the Bryce Harper owner doesn't get credit for anything but a run scored, because he doesn't get credit for the guy making it on base from the walk if you're in batting average league. He doesn't get the RBI, obviously. He's not getting a home run. He's not getting credit for a hit. So it's a much purer, much better way to value hitters rather than just using batting average.
I've been getting questions asked about punting categories as well, and I love these questions now because I feel like we haven't received them since March, but now again everybody's getting that itch, and that's why we're all going to win in fantasy baseball. So when it comes to punting categories, especially stolen bases, I've been hearing from some of our subscribers that they're afraid with some of the scoring settings that they have in their respective leagues that their league mates are going to be able to punt stolen bases. So is there a way to prevent that, and how do you handle punting categories in your leagues?
So normally in my home leagues or ones I do with my friends over the course of a 162 game season, I am one that will actively punt categories. I will, in my 18 team league, I do generally punt saves, because in our league closers go for so much in an auction Like if a closer goes for $10, the only thing you're really getting is saves. The ratio is great, but it's over such a small number of innings that it doesn't ultimately affect your ERA and WHIP quite as much as, if I spend $10 and I get a guy like Tyler Glasnow, who in a normal season would pitch, let's say, 170 innings, versus a guy like Aroldis Chapman, or not even Chapman, let's just go with like a mid-tier closer like, I don't know, Archie Bradley maybe. All you're getting is saves out of Bradley, but you're getting a lot more strikeouts out of the starter and wins and better ERA and WHIP over the long term. So this year, though, I don't know that you can successfully – I think it's going to be hard to actively punt a category because for saves, those middle relievers can pick up saves just as easily as they could pick up a win because if, let's say, Aroldis Chapman, who has already tested positive for coronavirus, isn't feeling well or is, needs time to get up to speed or whatever, Adam Ottavino is going to get saves. It's possible Chad Green could get saves. It's possible there's a whole bevy of dudes in the Yankees bullpen that could get saves. So punting a category like saves is actually harder to do this year than you might think. Stolen bases, I won't actively go after a one category guy this year. Like Malik Smith, I won't actively go after Malik Smith because if he's not getting on base, he's not getting me steals.
Right.
And in 60 games, these teams can't afford to play a guy who's not getting on base. And so he's going to kill your batting average. He's not going to play, and then he's not going to get you the steal, so it's a wasted roster spot. I will, however, go for guys that give me a little bit of everything. I had the first pick in one of my leagues. I went with Christian Yelich in that one. That guy's going to get me high batting average, home runs. He's a 5-category guy. So as it gets later, I'm going to focus mostly on the multi-positional guys, but guys that will fill in, give me a variety. It doesn't have to be a 5-tool guy, but let's go for like a 3-category guy at least. So I don't know there's a way to actively stop people from punting categories because personally, I have had a lot of success in my league punting saves. Like I have finished second in an 18-team fairly big money league 3 years in a row, and I've punted saves every year. And there was just a tweet I was reading the other day. Somebody broke down the last 4 or 5 years of the NFBC high money leagues, and it turns out the most inefficient money spent in those leagues are steals and saves. So I just think people are getting smarter and figuring out it's not a great use of draft capital to go after those specific stats because there's so little of them you have to pay up for them in terms of draft spot or auction value that it becomes prohibitive to go get them.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this as well when doing one of the mocks that I've done regarding Malik Smith, and I was seeing him drop a little bit, and I didn't understand why, and thinking about grabbing him, and I'm saying, okay, well, in a season where we need sure things, this guy we at least know steals bases. But then I'm hearing you're talking, and I'm thinking, oh, he needs to get on the bases
right in
order to steal them. And fewer opportunities create a direct correlation there. So you've got me now not as twisted as I was before in why this guy was dropping when, hey, it's a cheap source of stolen bases, getting cheaper. But you're right, Selz, you're right. And someone who's not cheap that I want to ask you about, you mentioned the top of the draft board. You're saying one Yelich. What are you doing regarding Mike Trout? How far does he have to drop for you to take him, even in auctions as well?
Well, I don't know if anybody watched it, but I produced the live stream over the weekend of the NFBC Super Sprint League. It's a huge money league. These people paid $2,500 to play in a 15-team. It's a very close-knit league. They do it every year. Normally, the buy-in's like twice that. Mike Trout fell to the 14th pick in a 15-team league. That's not actually the farthest we've seen him go because in the NFBC since, I think, June, the farthest he's fallen is 17. So he was at least a second-round pick once. I personally am not taking the risk. I know on that live stream and subsequent radio show about it, our Howard Bender pointed out that he could just be gone for 3 days, because we don't know what the quarantine type stuff is. He could just miss 3 days and then come back and be fine. And then you've got a serious steal on your hands with Mike Trout late in the round. But I'm not taking that chance. The guy has sounded completely unsure this season if he even wants to be out there and play. And it's entirely possible that when his wife gives birth, hopefully everything goes smoothly and everything is good, that he just says, you know what, we're not contending for the playoffs right now. I don't really have to keep putting myself and my family and my newborn's health in harm's way, and I'm just going to sit out. And then you've only got a half a season of Mike Trout. So personally, I am not taking Mike Trout. But I understand people want to take the face of baseball, the guy who's been about as consistent as anybody's been. And our own Jen Piacenti pointed out that like 75% of Mike Trout is better than 100% of almost anybody else.
Right, and I'm stuck on that, Selz, because she's right with saying that, but that's what makes me still want to go after a guy like Mike Trout. I get it's very risky, but I'll take this. I'm looking at this last mock that I was in. Ivar Anderson, our guy Ivar from FantasyAlarm.com, took Trout 3rd overall. Then, I think knowing the situation with the way he built the roster shortly after, he went after J.D. Martinez, Starling Marte, got Strasburg, Jose Abreu, another power bat, Moustakas, and then addressed pitching again. I think that was a good way of protecting yourself in case he doesn't go back. He addressed outfield early, got a lot of power, still was able to get an ace in the 4th round as well in Strasburg. Shorter season works out better for him. Back to the power for first base where it's not as deep with Abreu. So, and Moustakas as well, a little bit more. I actually think that he gave himself enough plate protection pretty much with this build that if you want to still take Trout as a top 5 pick, there are ways you could build your roster and still be all right.
Oh, there are definitely ways you can do it. I'm just saying, me personally,
right.
I'm not taking a top 3 pick. And, you know, if it gets to 3, if I'm picking 3rd and Acuna and Yelich are off the board, then I'm going to have a real thought on my hands as to, you know, do I let Trout go? Do I go after another, you know, guy like, I don't know, Francisco Lindor? Or maybe, I mean, that's too high to take Jose Ramirez. But, you know, do you go a pitcher at that spot? I probably wouldn't. I'd probably go Lindor at that spot. But it's just a legitimate concern that, yes, his heart is with the Angels, we think. You know, he's come out and said he's been waffling basically the entire time.
Well, he doesn't want to say the wrong thing. That's why.
Well, right, because he's...
And then have people like us start analyzing every single word that he's saying.
But it's a legitimate concern. I mean, this is the couple's first kid. We've already seen players sit out because they're adopting like Buster Posey is adopting newborn premature. Well, he and his wife are adopting newborn premature twins, and he doesn't want to put them at risk, and so Posey is sitting out. Other players, Garrett Cole, his wife already had the baby. They're healthy. They're back home, and he's good to go. So we'll see. But for me, it's not a risk that – and, yes, I know anybody can get coronavirus and anybody can get injured and whatnot, but this is a different – this is a different story. You know, if your top pick gets coronavirus, there's nothing you could do. There's no way you could see it coming.
No.
But with Trout, we know the risk that's waiting there. And so that's, you know, to each their own. I'm not going to tell you not to take Mike Trout. I'm just saying, me personally, I'm not doing it unless I'm sitting 14th in the first round and a 15-teamer and Mike Trout's still there. Sure, then I'll take the risk there.
You mentioned what can we do if one of our players gets COVID. There's not much we could do then, but prior to the season starting, we can do something about our league cells. One more question. What is the appropriate amount of injured list spots / corona spots that we should have in fantasy baseball leagues, in your opinion?
I would say I'm pretty comfortable with 3 right now. I think that gives you the option of, you know, if a guy gets injured, you still have 2 others for coronavirus things. You know, normally I think TGFBI usually has 2 IL spots or maybe only 1 IL spot. That's too few. But I don't want people to be able to stash like an entire starting lineup on their IL and just keeps them off the waiver list or whatever. So I would say 3 is probably an appropriate number. I mean, is that what you're?
I've heard 5 for football. I've heard 3 for baseball. I've heard 5. So, yeah, and also as a commissioner,
I mean, it probably also depends on how deep your league is too.
Right, you're in an 18-team league, a 20-team league.
Yeah, so obviously the more spots, if you add, let's say we have 3 IL spots right now,
Right.
That's 60 players that could be sitting in the IL. If you add another one, that's another 20 players that gets taken off the waiver list. Things get shallow real quick when you're talking about that many guys not accessible to the waivers. So
yeah, I think if you're in 10 or 12-team leagues, you could go 3 to 5, but remember, as the commissioner, you're going to have to essentially troll every single team to make sure they're not just stashing, that once their player is off the injured list, the COVID list, whatever you want to call it, then you're making sure that they're back in their lineup. Even picking up players who are on COVID already and stashing them should not be allowed. That's something that, as a commissioner, hey, that's the price to play in these type of environment, in these type of times. We're going to have to be more active commissioners this year. We just want fairness in our leagues, and everyone likes to beat this system. Not if you're a great commissioner, though, Selz. And you're a great person.
I don't commission.
Exactly. You just enjoy.
Yeah, I don't want all that. I don't want all that.
Matt Selz, this is a true award winner. Pass the buck to someone else. Seriously.
I got enough to do for FA. I don't want to be a commissioner of a league.
No, I don't think you've been working hard enough, Selz. We're just kidding. I'm surprised you're not able to produce these and host these at the same time. But
I have before. I just didn't want to do it today.
Follow Selz at the Selzman on Twitter. Give me a follow at Fensty Sports. For Selz and Fensty, Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. We always dominate. Why? There isn't any other option. We just win. Happy baseball season week.